and I'm going to try to do this quickly so we can have a break. So I first heard about all this from Steve Schwartzman, anthropologist, at an anthropology meeting. We were at a conference, American Anthropological Association. He sat down and told me about these rubber tappers. At the time, I was involved in research in Pará, the research you heard about a few weeks ago, where it was just land wars and mining and logging, and there were no Native people there with a proposal for an alternative. So I became very interested in this. And just by chance, our university, University of Florida, was invited by the president of the Federal University of Acre to come and visit and talk about a collaboration. So I jumped on this immediately and went to Acre in 1986 with a colleague, Camp Redford, for 3 days, which is insane. It took us 2 days to get there in those days. And in fact, we flew out of Jacksonville to Sao Paulo, and our luggage never made it out of Jacksonville. So we arrived in Rio Branco with nothing. And they took us right to a store. We bought some clothes. And then it turned out there was no room at the hotel because there had been a lot of burning and they'd closed the airport. And everybody who was planning to leave hadn't left the hotel. So somebody took us to their apartment where we went to take a shower and there was no water.
Welcome.
Actually, that earned us a lot of respect by people because we just said, okay, well, we'll just change clothes and go right to our meeting with no shower. They thought, oh, well, these gringos might be all right. And we started then talking with people about what we might do together. And what we decided on was, if you recall the session on gender, we talked about the farming systems program. We decided a training program in this farming systems approach would be a good way to get people to work together in the field. So that's what we did. 1988 and 1989, we did training programs. I can skip through all this now. I'll just tell you this story. John was a part of those first courses as a student. So we took our own students down, and then Acre was so small. The university had one PhD at that time. And so we decided to do something with the university, but invite a lot of other organizations to be a part of it. So we had a very diverse group of people who worked with communities. And we did a training course, and then we all went to the field and actually, in small groups, interviewed producers, rubber tappers, agriculturalists, and Indians, to learn about their systems from them. So that whole approach I talked about of farming systems, which was revolutionary at the time, let's talk to the producers themselves. And the group really gelled as a result of these field visits and became a nonprofit called Pesacre, which is still going. It was officially formed in 1990. So that was kind of the way things got started. In 1986, and again in 87 and 88, I met Chico Mendes. They took me to meet him. It was already kind of complicated because of the security, because of the death threats. But in 86, I met him. This is at the birthday of his son, Sandino, his first birthday. And this was named for the Sandinistas. That was in the Seringal Cachoeira, where at that time he was still living. And then later, I visited with him other times. But he was just sort of an inspiration to everybody who met him. So I became one of those people. So Acre, as you know, one of the advantages is being isolated and kept it out of these big development pushes in other places. So, and it has no minerals to speak of, no mining. There were a lot of reasons why it was very isolated, but it had also been kept out of some of those development pressures. You've already heard this much better from Marie. This is the same story that she told. Same pictures. When he was killed, we planted a magnolia tree at the south end of this building. It's still there, and there's a plaque, so go look for it. We also took up a collection and sent some money down, sent a telegram. I was finding all these things. And this was the article that I wrote. I remember this because it was the first fax I ever sent. It was this article when I sent it to this newspaper in New York that asked me. So we became involved at that time, and over time, this is the group in 1988. Okay, so here's John. Here's me. Aaron Kleiner's in here somewhere. It's right in front of you. That's cool. They weren't even married yet. This is Chico. This is Georgie Viana. So Georgie was a technical. He was a forester, and he worked for a state agency called FUNTAC, and he was a good friend of ours. And he came later was elected governor. You'll hear about that. So after that, he came and visited, and that's in my living room, Georgie. Here's Karen with her research assistant. Some other students that you probably don't. So this is the prize that's on the table, which I received in 2009, the Chico Mendes Prize for Florestania from the state. There's a federal one, which the TCD got honorable mention for our program here. This one was for me personally. My friend Milton accepted it because I couldn't fly down there for the prize ceremony. And this woman, Adriana Morera, she won the international prize, and I got the local one. So I was really happy.
The gentleman with the purple striped shirt, that's you, right?
Yep.
So he was the governor of Acre. Long before he was the governor of Acre, he was in the person. I want to mention that because of the threads that run through the history.
So there's some pictures of him in that album. We should pass that over to John. Okay, so we've already done this. So I just want to talk about briefly, I'm just going to zip through these, but we really tried to support all the efforts in Acre to do something different. So it was an alternative development proposal. It started with Chico Mendes and the extractive reserves. It became a statewide proposal when Georgie Viana became governor. And so we tried to, as an external university, tried to support that, find appropriate ways to do that. Here we are again in my living room. You've already seen those pictures. This picture, 1988, here's Chico. This is a rubber tapper. This is Karen Kiner, comerciando, an attorney. There I am translating for this British journalist and a Japanese environmentalist. So this was Chico in a nutshell. He could handle all these people. And I remember this day very well. You must have been there. He grabbed his knife and said, "Let's go cut rubber." And we all trailed after him. This guy was complaining, couldn't we do it somewhere with better light for the photographs? Of course, we're in the middle of the forest. But this was his real gift, was bringing people together. And he was very comfortable with himself. We had these two courses, 1988, 89. And here we have a newsletter from 1989 that mentions Vino. His name is actually Arnovio Marquez. He came up in 1988, and so did the former, Mancio later became Secretary of Planning. And this is Raimundo Barros, Chico's cousin. So Marie didn't really talk about this as much, but there was also this national alignment afterwards that allowed this proposal to really take form at a higher level. Her work as Secretary for Amazon Coordination. Lula had been arrested with Chico Mendes under the military. So he had a connection there. And there you see Lula, Georgiana, and Vino, and Tião Viana, who's the governor, outgoing governor now. And Marina Silva, who was a rubber tapper, just ran for president for the third time. And she was environment minister. So a lot of repercussion at the national level because of these connections. Acre's state government then tried to really do a very ambitious, I remember Jorge saying, every state has their own model. The Pará has the big projects. Manaus has the free trade zone. Rondônia has colonization programs. We're going to be the forest-based development. So this came from way before he became governor, and he was very visionary. And they worked with this concept of florestania, so it wasn't just let's push forest development, it was let's do that while respecting the traditional culture of the forest people. So they invented this term, florestania, which is sort of citizenship, forest citizenship. And they reorganized a lot of the state structure to focus on forests. And they were able to really have an impact. This slide in particular shows how they were able to increase, they were really able to stop the expansion of pastures for cattle by making the cattle pastures more productive. So they can produce more kilograms of meat without expanding pastures. They decoupled pasture expansion from meat production, which was huge. And they're also, I think, the only state, or at least this is an environmental services program statewide that they're developing in collaboration with the governor's Climate and Forest Task Force. So here we've got Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was governor of California. And Acre's become kind of a poster child for all this. So we worked over like a 20-year period. We developed, first of all, the collaboration with Acre, which was this NGO that we helped form through those training programs. And I generated a lot of funding to support their work with communities. And then our students would carry out research that would feed into that. We had a lot of mechanisms that we developed for collaboration, publishing together, exchanges, bringing people up here for short-term training, formal agreements, training courses. We had many, many people, and I'm going to just show you in a minute. Sorry, I'm going to. So this is a book I wrote on Rio Branco with another professor from the university there. By this time I had a small child and I couldn't really go to the field, so I did urban research. And then later, becoming involved in MAP, which is a tri-national initiative, Madre de Dios, Peru, Acre, Brazil, and Pando, Bolivia, which all come together right there. And you'll be hearing a little bit more about this from Stephen Pers later. Just to say, this is 2004, I was the keynote speaker. Anyway. There were like 1,000 people here, and maybe 20 of them were outsiders. It's really local. So just to give you an idea, we had a lot of people. This is like over 20 people one summer. We had to have a list, a timetable when they were coming and going, just to keep track of them. And what came out of this, to me, the biggest thing has been supporting the capacity. So Acre took on this enormous challenge with very little to work with. Really small state, very few people, trained people. And so we tried to do lots of kinds of training and capacity building. And some of those people became really important. So these couple of people who were key Acre people became state secretaries. Claiza became president of the Environmental Institute. Ricardo Mello is now in Brasilia with WWF. We worked with the Climate Change Institute and the Public Ministry. So we've had, because of our long-term connection, we've had a lot of ways to support and influence things. And then we got these prizes that I mentioned. And there's also, I got a medal from the university, which is a medal. Got a medal. And I've already talked about it also.